Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Engineer Your Success, Leadership, and Life Harmony Like a Mother show. I'm your host, Kinia, award-winning investigative journalist turned maternity leave and working motherhood strategist, and I'm a mom of 2 boys, 2 and 4. And at Pros and Babes, we believe you should never, ever be alone with a crushing overwhelm of figuring out work-life integration, balance, harmony, whatever you like to call it on your own, right? Becoming a mom and a working mom is just it can be so hard, and getting mentorship at the right time, the right expertise, the right support, empathy, and sometimes tough love when you need it can really make a difference for your family's well-being and your career. And today on the show, I have one of my favorite guests, Brenda from all the way in Australia. We have a lot of conversations about motherhood and career. Welcome back, Brenda.
Hi, Kinia. Thanks so much for having me on your platform.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So today we'll be covering quite a bit. You are passionate about so many topics for women in STEM. So, before we dive in, tell us about yourself, who you are as a mom and as a professional, and then we'll get into the topics that we have covered for today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. My name is Brenda. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I came over to Australia when I was 18 to study chemical engineering. I initially wanted to be in cosmetics, but ended up in the mining and manufacturing industry. So that's where I've spent the last 16 years of my career, mostly male dominated and very interesting. And I've really enjoyed my time in this industry. And really my passion now is to inspire more girls and more women to join and move into and stay in this industry. I have a 4-year-old boy named Wesley. He is a dreamboat. Well, he's becoming a little bit teenagerish now, but mostly he is a cutie that makes me smile and makes life worth it for me. And since becoming a mum, that added a lot more layers and a lot of shifts to my identity and even to my working career. So certainly so much to unpack there. And I understand so many women are quite fearful about this stage where you move into motherhood and wonder where exactly in their career they should press play on that. So I'm sure resources such as this and your podcast and the work that you do, Kinia, are so helpful. So yes, definitely. That's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to talk with you. One thing I've noticed when speaking to different moms is there are key things that stand out for levels of satisfaction and happiness, and that is the internal dialogue and the internal chatter. It makes a huge difference. And actually, I just want to make sure I'm closing a tab where we're talking together so there are no pings. But there's a huge inner dialogue where one thing that came up in a conversation with an engineer today, actually, she says, we should really shift the narrative from it's so hard being a mom to look how motherhood has empowered me and made me even more valuable. And that's a huge mindset shift. And, we had such a nice heated conversation because I challenged her on that, obviously with a smile. I believe the same thing, right? We should always position motherhood as something that is valuable. But even just to believe that has a certain level of privilege to it. It kind of implies that you had the resources to build, good resilience around your mental health and were able to access that support when things weren't so great. So we started unpacking that with her, and she said how much her parents invested in her, right? And all the extra schooling and mentorship. And because so many women enter motherhood and suffer with mood or anxiety or just that inner dialogue that makes you start feeling like you're kind of worthless, right? And we don't all get access to the right resources and mentors to help us get through that hump. So already the fact that we're kind of saying you should shift the narrative in your mind and the inner dialogue is not readily available to everyone. But I do see consistently that for those who stick in a demanding career, in a male-dominated career, in a difficult one where you hear horrible things. I hear women are being told horrible things. Like in this case, we heard that, this woman was told by a female director that I paid my dues and it sucked when I was a mom, and you got to pay your dues too, and it's not going to be easier for you. Or hearing things like you got a promotion because we've got a diversity and inclusion policy, and you weren't the best for the job. But so things like that are real, and it can can really make you question, should I be putting up with this stuff? Is it worth it to stay in my career? And, we tell women and girls, go in STEM, you need to make an impact, but then nobody gives you an instruction manual, and you enter the working world and you navigate stuff like that, and ouch, right? So Brenda, how have you managed? Where do you think is the source of your boundless optimism? Because you and I have spoken so many times, and whenever we talk, it doesn't matter what's happening. If you're sick or your husband's away because you are a fly in, fly out wife, right? We can talk about that. But you always bring this optimism to the table. I've never heard you. I'm sure you've had your own struggles behind the scenes, and I would like us to dive into that. The fact that it's not always sunshine and unicorns, even if you have a good, positive personal brand, and if you're an optimist and you believe in what you do, there are days where you're probably crying and wondering, did I really sign up for that? So tell me, this is my long 5-minute question. What do you think is the source of your undying optimism? For the months I've known you, you're always bringing a smile to our conversations.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much to unpack in that, Kinia. I think the industry certainly has a long way to grow in terms of equipping women who are looking to join motherhood and pursue that section of their career. There's so many stereotypes. The narrative currently is that, if you choose motherhood, you have to choose one or the other, motherhood or career. There's no mentoring that's yet fully, normalized, I guess, across the industry, that shows us how that can be done well, how you can do motherhood and how you can do career together in a positive way. And I suppose my optimism, Kinia, probably has stemmed from some life challenges that I went through a little bit before I went and had my baby. So it was probably like 10 years ago now. It was 11th of the 11th, 2011, for those people who like numbers. And at the time, I was doing fly in, fly out, as you mentioned, which my husband currently does now. But at the time, I was doing fly in, fly out as a chemical engineer. I was doing 8 days on, 6 days off from a mine site. And I was living in Sydney at the time. And I had a partner there, and I'd gone home for a fly in, fly out break, one of the 6 days off. And it was my partner's birthday that weekend. And I planned a romantic retreat, a cabin in the woods, go-karting, horse riding, just a nice romantic retreat. And I'd hired a car and we're driving. And he said, hey, look, I've got to go pick up a parcel for my friend. I said, well, it's not very convenient for us to be doing this right now, but okay, let's go. And I drove and came to the post office. When we got there, he's like, I've left my ID. Can you jump in and go collect it for me on my behalf? I was like, okay. So I went in, I asked for the parcel, and the lady started looking around at the back, trying to find it. They appeared to be struggling to find it. So can you go get a coffee while you wait, while we look for it for you? I was like, yeah, no worries. So I went out, got a coffee, lolled around, dreamt about the weekend that was coming. And then I went back into the post office, and they sort of ushered me forward because they found it. And I collected the package and went outside. Well, when I went out there was two strange things that happened. Not only was my partner out there to collect the package from me, but there was 2 undercover police officers. Because not only was that parcel being tracked, but it apparently contained drugs. And I was just like, what is happening here? And so I went to the police station with them because I was like, this is just some big mistake. Let me go and explain what's happened. I didn't plead the 5th Amendment. I didn't ask for the services of a lawyer because I didn't need one, right? Wrong. After about 3 hours of questioning, they were like, look, unfortunately, we are unable to proceed. You'd have to spend the night here in the detention center. And I was just like, wow, how has this happened? Like my mind was just racing. And the next day, I had to go to the court section of the center, and they essentially said, the judge had read out my matter. I had a brief call with a lawyer from the legal aid, like the government-issued lawyer. And before I knew it, all I remember him saying was, bail denied. And I was just like, what? There was no one to look to the left or to the right to and ask questions and say, sorry, how do I repeat? We need to go back in there. Like, I don't know what's just happened. Before I knew it, I was being ushered to a jail, high security prison in Sydney. So,
Holy moly, Brenda!
I don't know if you actually know the story or not. But this was just so unbelievable. Obviously, I went through like a whole lot of questioning. I felt embarrassed. I felt disappointed. I felt devastated. I was like, what's happened? Like, did he know what was going on? So many questions running through my head. And the whole exercise, obviously now looking back and, going through so much personal development, I understand now that life happens for us rather than to us. And through that, I mean, obviously I didn't think that the day I was getting there, and I was so scared, like I'm around criminals and high profile criminals. But I had to ask for help. I had to call my family and tell them, look, I'm now embroiled in a legal battle and I need your support. I need to get a lawyer. I need bail. I need so much stuff. And when I contacted work, because, they were obviously expecting me back in a few days' time, I said the same sort of thing. I've been involved in an incident. I'm currently working to clear my name. And they said, look, they said 3 words that changed everything. They said, you're still welcome. And it still, it still touches my heart when I think about those 3 words, because they really did make everything worthwhile. At that point in time, I was like, I need to do something to give back to the industry. And I didn't know what it was at that time because I had so much other stuff to deal with. But it just meant a lot that I could have that career, which allowed me to go back and be gainfully employed and to just have something to keep my mind occupied while I was now working, essentially 2 lanes, creating my career and trying to clear my name. And it took about, a long slog. I think it was 12 or 14 months or so of just legal proceedings. But finally I was found not guilty and my name is clear. There's nothing on my record. But it was just that incident, which, years ago now, which sort of helped build my gratitude, helped build my ability to lean on people, to lean on support systems, and to know that life could be a whole lot worse. Like if I was in Zimbabwe and that happened, that could have been a whole lot worse. If there's so many things I looked at that I was just like, this was as good as it could have been, given the scenario. So yes, some of my positivity comes from there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, people are going to hear me both sniffling, wiping my nose and my eyes, because we never got to that story earlier. And let me tell you, that's not what I was expecting coming into our recording today. So, wow, what a story. I understand that this was a past relationship and you did not see this person. Well, I'm making assumptions here.
Yes, I haven't seen him since we essentially parted ways in that parking lot at the post office. And obviously after that relationship, I was a bit, hesitant to dive into anything else. I wasn't trusting men. There's a few things that had to be repaired there. But my husband now, he's just amazing. He is a dreamboat, and I'm thankful that I've met him, because if this hadn't happened, then I wouldn't have connected with him. And we've got a beautiful son together. We're expecting another one in a couple of months. So definitely life is so much better now. And I think as I've navigated my career as a mother, it's also, I liked what you said before about, what your conversation was with this engineer this morning around we don't feel empowered to share what motherhood teaches us. Because I see a lot of women say, I don't want to put my maternity leave break, especially if they've taken a little bit longer away from the workplace. They don't want to put that on their resumes. They don't feel like they've got anything to stand for, to prioritize from a workplace perspective. But it's so much involved in being a mother. And there's no manual. No 2 motherhood journeys are the same. Kids can have plenty of issues that you have to navigate and try work through as a mom and to manage. So I think there's so much skills and potential, and both soft skills and like tactical skills, strategic skills that are applicable in the workplace that us as women need to embrace even more, and shine a spotlight on.
Yeah. Okay. I still have to gather my thoughts to be able to dive into, like, let's transition into building the personal brand after the story. But I'm still in shock. Although the more I think about it, the more it does make sense to me. I look at different people and stories in my life that something like this incident would really force you out of your comfort zone, to say the least. And and spearhead a powerful transformation. And so it's so interesting for me to hear the roots of your story now today. I wasn't aware of that, even though we had so many conversations. So thank you for sharing. Well, before we get into the personal branding piece, I'd love to talk about why is it so important for women and for more women and girls to consider STEM professions, because it is not an easy path and we're not out of the woods. And there's still so many women who leave this field of work after having children. And again, the conversation I was having today is because maybe engineers have so many transferable skills that if they don't want to put up with some of the CRAP that they experience after having kids or negative comments. So how will the world be a better place if more women and girls consider the STEM profession? How can they persist? How can they weave in that work and the real incompatibility that can exist with doing the work and being in the field? Sometimes women completely change trajectories for health and safety reasons, or for not wanting to be fly in, fly out, or for just not being able to align the work job, the work requirements, and then the longing they have to be present with their families. So how will the world be a better place when more moms and girls?
Oh, this is a soft spot. I think the world certainly needs us to embrace our differences to create a better world. And I think in the male-dominated industry of STEM in general, and mostly so in engineering, this is even more pertinent because women bring a new angle. They bring a new lens. Again, women are much more nurturing. They're just more inclusive. So they tend to look at the bigger picture a lot more than men, who are quite focused and quite specific about their focus. Women think about the full scope of the community, essentially. And so I think they make things so much better. So I have an example that I always talk about, which is my breast pump. When I returned back into the workplace, I had, it was my first day, my son had gone back to daycare. I was now just chatting with the girls, and I felt that familiar sting, and I was like, oh, okay, it's time to go and express some milk. So I took my pump and I was like, oh, sheesh, where am I going to go? There wasn't really a mother's room, and I understand plenty of workplaces still have this conundrum. There is no designated place for expressing. And so I went to the toilet. I went to the bathrooms. There was 3 stalls, and I walked into the middle one, shut the door, and sat down. And then I could just sort of hear this buzzing sound. I could smell a waft of disinfectant. I was just like, this is just not cool, but this is what I've got to do with. I put the pump on, and then it was like, it was so loud. It was so embarrassing. It was echoing through the whole bathroom walls, and I was like, I hope no one walks in here.
Here you are pumping in a toilet and still wondering, caring about what people are thinking of the bus.
Yeah, it's like, this shouldn't be happening here. It's really embarrassing. I don't want to have any misdemeanors. And then I had to afterwards collect the milk and wonder how to, sneakily go and put that in the fridge and how to hide it in this. So there's so many things we go through as mothers. But that made me really think, why do we have a pump that's so noisy when we've got whisper quiet vacuum cleaners, dishwashers and washing machines that are touted to be, to be much more quieter than this? And probably haven't run a washing machine in an echoey toilet. But it just made me think, we need to have more women at the table, to design the life cycle of these products a bit more holistically. Someone who can be there to challenge what's been decided, to say, hey, can we do this better? Can you make it quieter in case, can you make it more discreet? And that's just really what made me think we need more women to step up and speak up at these situations. And if they're not there, to be told about the opportunities in STEM, which is where solutions are designed. This is where we come up with ideas. This is where we create a better future. This is where we create a better world. In our kitchens, I'm pretty sure a lot of us women listening to the podcast right now, we can't reach the top cupboard. So who lives in the kitchen? Who works in there mostly? Who needs to access it? Us. So I think we as women need to be involved in those conversations a lot more. So that's definitely why I believe women do need to be in the industry. More women need to be encouraged, and the industry needs to shift. There's a whole systemic issue that the industry is trying to work through now. Like this industry is not designed for women, so there's things that we need to do: add toilets, make tasks less manual, include things that will also benefit the men. Because I think in the past the narrative has always been, how do we make the job easier for women? It's like, well, make it easier for women, it's also easier for men. Why do they have to break their backs and push hard valves?
We were talking about the pumping too. I remember going for a walk with my baby and in the mall, and like the nursing room is with a toilet. Would you ever tell a guy to go eat his lunch in a toilet? Why is the space for playing with your kids and nursing your child right next to the flushing toilet? And I'm sorry, but the smell of, what? Right?
Yes.
I'm just in the outrage right now. I'm feeling and just visioning you on that toilet pumping your milk, and that feeling of sneaking away and hiding it. And what do you think, Brenda? Okay, because I've been talking about this stuff for 4 years, and I do have a loyal base and following and super committed women. A lot of them are engineers. One thing I love working, engineers are so methodical, and obviously not only, I don't want to think that my non-engineer women are not, valued, but here we are having the conversation about the STEM world. And what do you think needs to happen for this message to go a little bit more viral? Like, I would love in 2022 to talk about this differently so it gets more enthusiasm. One of the hypotheses I have is that when women have kids, it can be such a shock for us. It's such a big change that we're just too tired to advocate for ourselves, right? And we kind of are just surviving, keeping our heads above water, and then we get back to work and find childcare. But like for a couple of years of your life, you just kind of try to coast, right? And so that's one of my hypotheses is women may not have the energy to advocate for themselves. And then when they're out of it, they just want to enjoy life again. So it kind of slows down the process for us to make radical change because, well, got baby and your hands are full. When are you going to have time to advocate to make things better? So what are your thoughts as to in 2022, how, what should we be talking about in terms of working motherhood to actually accelerate the pace at which things change and build a time where no mom is left pumping in a toilet, smelling, I'll say it, the farts of the person who was installed next to them. This should never happen. And I also was pumping in suboptimal, dusty rooms with no chairs and like questionable hygiene, right? So what do we need to do to stir the pot in 2022?
It's such a big question, Kinia, and you're right. You said you've been thinking about it for 4 years. I'm sure women across the world have been thinking about it for even longer. And I think the challenge is we need more women in positions that can speak into and make these policies actually translate into something tangible. So I know companies are pushing to have more women in upper management, more women in management positions. Yeah. But we need, once those women get there, because it's very easy, and particularly in the male-dominated industries where the boys' clubs are, for this to just be, a small item on the agenda that doesn't even get a look in, right? And then women, if you're the only one on a team of 10, it's hard for you to be the only one trying to push things. So I think certainly this intent for more women at the management and leadership level is going to be important to ensure that D&I, and this is really more of a, I don't know if it's even a diversity and inclusion question. It's a human question. It's an acknowledgement of mothers and parents needing that additional facility, right? And how much of a impact it makes on their workday. What does that do to them? That it's certainly probably inclusion it falls under, but how do you make it not?
I would argue that it falls under diversity and inclusion. I certainly thought it would, because as a working mother, especially, as a working father too, but your experience of work is very different, and you experience biases. The motherhood penalty is, the most common form of gender bias, right? So I would. It's not common enough, but I see it does belong in the diversity and inclusion discussion.
Sure. And I think, look, the pandemic has probably been really good for us in a way. It's had its light and its shadows, but the light has been that when there is a policy big enough, when there's urgency, people will move, companies will move, people will make a way, they'll find a plan, they'll adjust things. And so I would love to see motherhood and the issues around this tackled with as much urgency as the pandemic, and the response to that had to be, we can move quickly when we want to. We can make budgets available for a nursing room which has got a chair, a comfortable chair, a fridge, and clean hygiene, and no additional smells or whatever else in there. So it's really about us banding together, continuing to choose to challenge. I like the International Women's Day theme this year. That was choose to challenge. I'm not sure what next year's one is, but I think we actually need to continue to challenge. Like, it's not just a one-day affair. It's about having it constantly on the agenda, having us continually band together and, continue to say something about it. It's heartwarming when we see people like Jacinta Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, making things official, making things policy. So, for example, for mothers who have lost their children, there's a grieving day that's now become policy in New Zealand. So I think it's 2 days of mandatory leave has to be afforded to them, which in the past, women who've lost their babies, I've heard terrible stories of people who've had to do their procedures and then go to work the next day, or, it's just, they have felt that shame, that inability to discuss such matters with, often male bosses and even female ones who may, just think, oh, look, you've got to keep it moving. It's about recognizing and acknowledging that there's a process there, there's a sense of loss, there's a sense of recuperation that's needed for women to
Huge. Oh, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because something in my gut, because of all the stories I've been hearing, and I don't know if we're talking about it more, but it's very, very common for women to lose a child, a pregnancy, more than once. And I think there's some collective trauma right now. And, we're putting on masks, as you said, just showing up and soldiering on. And on the one hand, I want to choose my words really carefully. I don't want to say, to anything I'm going to say right now to be misinterpreted, but there's something that those challenges, they can build character and make us stronger, right? Like, just when you just talked about your challenge, how something awful happened to you and you turn into a source of optimism. And I think with the right healing, those very, very painful, difficult moments can be also the soil from some of the most beautiful changes that happen inside of us, right? But I think there definitely needs to be space for more collective healing, more conversation, more acknowledgement of the huge sacrifices that women make to have a career and have children. I think few of us expect how much we will sacrifice trying to have both. Was we enter this space thinking, you can have it all, and like, I'm going to have my child and then I'll work and I'll get my promotion. But the reality on the ground can be very different, right?
And acknowledgement goes a long way in a healing process. When people don't acknowledge something, or if you don't even take the time to process it, it can be an underlying, issue, that an underlying current that never will impede your fulfillment, will impede your ability to seek to rise or promotions, whatever that good looks like for your family and your family's life. And it can even impede on your relationship, your personal relationship at home with your partner. So I think these conversations need to continue happening. They need to, if it starts happening, if they haven't started, and continue happening, so that there is that collective healing that you're talking about. We need to equip the male leaders in our companies to be able to acknowledge and to address that. Like, if someone's was known to be expecting and all of a sudden they've experienced a loss, how do they deal with that? They don't just, pretend like nothing's happened, or, just say something that may be insensitive. So they also need some coaching and training and leadership expertise upgrading, essentially, now. And I think there's a big gap even post-pandemic around the people skills, because a lot of our companies were very KPI centric pre-pandemic. It's just about the numbers, about getting things done. And the pandemic really had to shift and up the leadership level on the people side. How are you doing? How's your mental health? How's your well-being? How are you taking time out? Are you safe at home? Psychological safety became a whole lot more pronounced. So there is a lot of things on the agenda that women are impacted by. And I think these conversations certainly need to continue to happen and continue to remain on the front end, so that it's a better working place for all of us. And I think women play a big part in that.
Yeah, so that's for a conversation about how women can make the world a better place if they persist in these professions like STEM and engineering. And I do want to take another moment to acknowledge, because I know a lot of our listeners have experienced pregnancy loss, and I I want to acknowledge your grief. I want to acknowledge your loss. I want to acknowledge, that I see you showing up, the only woman in the room, and maybe it's your third or fourth or fifth attempt at carrying a child. However, it's coming to you and you've experienced the loss, and then you're getting back up and you're taking care of the children that you have, being a partner to your husband, if that's the case, and then showing up at work and managing an operation or a plant or testing because people are counting on you. And at work you put up that mask and you soldier on, and you do it because you were told you could have it all, but nobody's holding your hand in the moment. So I want to tell you that Brenda and I we see you, we hear you, and we're grieving with you, and we stand by your side in the best way that we can with your pain. So if you're having tears listening to this podcast and you felt alone, know that there are at least 2 women and even more in our community who would hold hands with you right now and give you a big hug. Right? We know that pain runs for years for many of you. So you are not alone if you're listening to this. Brenda, we were the way the conversation went today. I have a couple of things in the ticker today, so we probably we'll be wrapping up the recording in just a second. But here, let's talk about one of the key pieces. So there's the importance of vision and values in life and career, and then the power of personal brand. And if we were going to talk about one of the things here, right, the stepping up, speaking up, standing out. I don't know if there's anything that could be as powerful as the story you shared, but if there's one thing of the topics that we were planning to discuss today, which I think the story you provided shares so much of the importance of those things, but what would you like to explore for our last topic of conversation today? What's burning in your heart?
Yeah, certainly. I think I touched on the stepping up, speaking out, and standing out element, which is really around the role we can play as engineers. So for those of us who are out there, those of us who are in the STEM careers, even if you're not in the STEM career, because I know a lot of us do talk about engineering as a whole, but I think we all have a part to play.
Yes.
When it's time for us to provide feedback, when we can perform a part to play in a survey of some sort, that's our opportunity to make things better. I think often it's easy for us to think, what role can I play? What difference will I make? But together, as we all step up and realize that we've got a part to play, we've got a perspective, we've got a background, we've got a diversity of experience and life that we've lived that enriches our thoughts, enriches our perspective, the more we can speak out from that space and really stand out. For too long, I think we've been told to fit in and to try and be like everyone else, but we are authentic. We are here for a specific reason on this world. And I just want to encourage us all to shine our light. And really that does work into your personal brand. Understand who you are. What do you want to leave a legacy for? Who do you want to be known for? What do you want people to talk about when you're not in the room? That's really your special sauce, your special space in this world. Own it. Find out what it is. It's okay to make mistakes. You don't have to get it right the first time. Trial it. Test it. Does it work? Does it feel good? Do you like it? If not, adjust it, tweak it. Life is not about getting it right the first time. Life is a journey of evolution, growth, and I'd love to encourage you all to boldly take that journey.
Yeah. Oh, Brenda, so much love for you. Every single conversation with you, I hope I get to see you in person in Australia one day. And you are such a wonderful human being. Thank you for the work you do. I will see you backstage in a couple of moments to say thank you again, but I'm so excited for your growing family. I feel so lucky that I got to meet you in the online sphere. I still have tears in my eyes from your story. I was really caught off guard by that powerful story, but I'm so excited for what's ahead for you. And for our listeners, if you loved this episode, if you enjoyed the insights, if this has called you to play bigger as a mom, please share it with other women who need to hear this message. I'm ready to put this year to bed. I'll be honest. I know we're joking that a number doesn't change anything, but this year has just been tough for me. And I want to step even more boldly next year and to know that what I'm doing has meaning and is touching hearts. And so that's my ask for you. If you love this space, please leave us a review. Please share with another mom. Please share with your leaders too. We need more leaders to hear this message. I haven't made this calling before, but one of our goals too is to get higher up in the conversation so that this is, when people listen to this in 10 years, they laugh because they realize how silly it was for a mom to pump in the bathroom. Now, I think that the title of this episode will be like, "Never shall I pump in a dirty toilet again."
That sounds like a good one.
And so I hope that our children will not need to have these conversations because we will have solved these issues and the world will have been designed in a more mom-friendly way, in the workplaces. If we're serious about having moms play leadership roles, then let's do more to support them in these really fragile moments. So, Brenda, thank you so much. I'll see you backstage in just a second.
Thank you so much, Kinia. Thanks to all the listeners.